First, I would like to say thank you for the invitation to speak here and giving PhDs a stage to talk about open science from our perspective. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Tess van Doorn and I'm a board member of PNN, focusing on open science and recognizing and rewarding PhDs. And I'm also a PhD at the Erasmus Medical Center at the Urology Department, and I'm currently working on a Zonneweg project. Today I will be talking about the results of the PNN survey that we conducted this year, in which we asked the PhDs about open science and rewarding and recognizing PhDs. I can imagine not all of you know what PNN is, so I will explain it. PNN stands for Promovendi Netwerk Nederland in Dutch, and we are the national interest group for PhDs in the Netherlands. Our members are the local PhD organizations of all Dutch universities, and we meet up with them regularly and get input. We have 8 board members with their own subject of interest. As I just mentioned, I am the board member focusing on open science and recognizing and rewarding PhDs. Other portfolios are, for example, labor conditions, international PhDs, and diversity. If you want to learn more about PNN, you can always visit our website. These are 2 statements of PNN about open science, which also can be found on our website. PNN supports the open science movement in the Netherlands, and we emphasize the importance of open science in modernizing science and increase its durability and trustworthiness. Universities and other stakeholders should increase their support of early career researchers, PhDs, in open science practices. This includes providing information and training, offering the optimal infrastructure, and stimulating and rewarding open science activities. As I just mentioned, this year we performed a survey to get a better insight in the different themes regarding PhDs, and open science and recognition and reward was one of the subjects that we asked questions about. 2,000 people participated and 1,600 did actually finish the survey. All universities and UMCs are represented, not all equally well, but they're all represented. And we have written 10 reports about the results of the survey. The report on recognition and reward, open science and career is not yet published, but will be published soon. So the results that I will be talking about today are not yet available. So regarding open science, we asked the PhD which type of open science practices they are encouraged to use in their PhD project. A quarter of the PhDs stated not to be encouraged to engage in open science at all. And 2/3 of the PhDs who are encouraged to publish open access. This was by far the most mentioned open science practice. Sharing research data was mentioned by 1/3 of the PhDs. Publishing codes and syntaxes, pre-registration or replication of research was mentioned less often, so there is still some progress to be made. And 7 participants stated not to know what open science was about, which I found quite shocking, although there are only 7. Apparently they have never heard about it or came across anything open science related. We looked into the differences between institutions and we only saw minor differences. PhDs from other institutions than universities or UMCs are a bit more often encouraged to engage in open science, but the differences were very little. We also looked at the differences between different types of PhDs, and we saw that external PhDs are relatively often not encouraged to engage in open science, and employee PhDs stated to be encouraged to publish code syntaxes or to pre-register their research relatively more often than the other PhD types. We also looked lastly at the differences between disciplines, and we found that half of the PhDs in the field of law are not encouraged to engage in open science. In contrast, PhDs from technical sciences and engineering stated to be encouraged in 80%. So they're doing well, but still progress can be made in, for example, publishing codes and syntaxes. Then a little side step. We also looked into the criteria for the PhDs project and the overall well-being of PhDs. And we saw that the third reason mentioned for high workload is pressure to publish. This is still an issue for PhDs to publish a lot and in high impact factor journals. We think that this criteria should be left behind, and we think that open science will help to do so. We also asked the PhDs about which topics they consider important in their overall assessments of their PhD projects. Of course, research was mentioned by almost 100%, and teaching and courses was mentioned by more than 50% of the PhDs. Most PhDs are asked to engage in teaching activities, which can take up a lot of time, so they want to get recognized for that. Open science was only mentioned in 27% of the PhDs, but we know that almost 75% of the PhDs is already encouraged to engage in open science, but we do not know if they are rewarded for that already in their overall assessment. So the conclusion and PNN's recommendations, we saw that 75% of the PhDs is already encouraged to be engaged in open science practices. So that is a good outcome, but there is still progress to be made by, for example, publishing codes, syntaxes, or replication of research, and in different disciplines like law. Now it seems that open science is only about open access, but there is more. Further progress can be made by letting go of requirements for publishing in journals with certain quality criteria or high impact factors, and encourage to publish open access instead. This includes institutes providing financial support for conducting open science research, as well as providing training on open science practices. We have to get rid of the quantitative criteria and focus on quality. More attention for PhDs in the new recognition and rewards of academics should be paid. The whole research chain should be recognized and rewarded differently, so PhDs as well, and side activities like teaching or courses should be taken into account. And the PhD is more than just a dissertation. Involve them, ask them what they need, and inform, educate them about open science to speed up the road to open science. I would like to thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, and otherwise you can always send your questions to one of those emails mentioned, or send us a question on Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing this presentation with us. And I think it's really interesting to hear what you found in the survey. We have about, I say, 5 to 10 minutes for questions. I already saw some in the chat, so I will have a look now. So somebody would like to know a little bit more about the results that you show, and they are asking that the results showing that PhDs are not encouraged to engage in open science activities, whether you think that they're actively discouraged or that it's something that is just not considered at all. Do you have more information on that?
No, we do not have more information on that because we didn't ask the PhDs that, but I don't think they are not encouraged, but they just don't know about the options of open science.
Okay, so it's really about sort of improving the advocacy and making sure it's more visible, for instance, in creating these communities, what we just talked about, or maybe targeting open science in sort of discipline-specific ways, because we also saw in the survey that certain disciplines are kind of lacking behind, which is also what we see at Doorn. Some of the disciplines have a large history of sharing data, whereas others are not. So I think this is also very much something that comes out of your survey, I think.
Yes, yeah, we saw differences. For example, law was behind.
Then there's a question asking you whether you could elaborate on how open science will help to lift the publication pressure.
I think for now the publication pressure is on high impact factor journals and keeping your research very in your own comfort of your own department. But if you share your data and do it more like together as a research group, then you need to take off the pressure to publish, because you do it more together, and you can imagine you publish less if you share your data.
So then you would think that by sharing your data, that would become more important, and the actual publications might be less important. So it's not necessarily about open access being related to the impact factor and this idea that you want to publish in high impact journals, but that when you share your data and actually make science a more collaborative process, that then you have other things of validating your science. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. I think that's a very nice question. Let me see if there are more questions. Yes, so there's a question from Dennis who says, do you think that making open science a part of the PhD training program would improve its popularity or interest among PhDs, especially in the external PhD cohort?
Yes, I think so. Now we don't have any information on open science in our institution, if I speak for myself. So it's that I'm funded by Zon en Wee that I know of open science. But otherwise, my colleagues here, they have no clue that there is more than open access. So yes, definitely.
So you think it in particular, so you think open access is something that is known? I mean, for open access, I think there's also been a movement for much longer, because I think the whole paying the publishers a lot of money for the work that researchers are creating has been an issue. So you think the other aspects, talk, for instance, about open software, open data, should be stressed even more?
Yeah, and writing a data management plan and how you build your database so it can be shared. Like, that's not something that we learn about.
Okay, thank you. Then there's one question that is on a survey question that was asked on whether people felt stimulated to practice open science. And the question is whether that stimulation was by their supervisor or other forms as well.
We haven't asked that question. The survey was quite long, so we had to shorten the question. So we don't know.
Okay.
It was in general. Yeah.
Okay, in general. Okay. Thanks a lot. I'm just going to see if there are more questions. There are actually still more questions coming in. It's really nice to see so much interaction in the chat. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and then I hope that you maybe would be able to also answer some questions afterwards in the chat. So this question is, was there a difference between first year and last year PhD students about their knowledge in open science?
Oh, that's a great question. We haven't looked into that, so we can still do that. That's something that could be interesting. Yes.
You have the information on which in sort of which year the PhD students were?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that would be interesting. And my hope would be that it's kind of something that is taught to people at the start.
So the new ones know. Well, we can look into that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank you very much, Tess, that you took your time to present this survey and gave us an inspirational idea about what PhDs are struggling with and what we need to do to help PhDs to get involved more with open science. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.